Hello and welcome to the debate right here at Press TV. I'm Marzieh Hashemi. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, no deal was reached in Geneva between Iran and the P5+1, though there are reports that the agreement was ready to be inked when Tel Aviv flexed its muscles. Now, one day after the intense negotiations, the U.S. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman, who heads the American delegation for the nuclear talks, has headed to Tel Aviv to meet with Israeli leaders. Are the Western countries involved in the nuclear talks sovereign nations, or do they take their orders from Tel Aviv? And what does it all mean for the future of reaching a deal between the parties? Stay with us as we take a look at all aspects of the latest talks between Iran and the P5+1.
Reports emerging following the Geneva talks suggest that France and the U.S. derailed the possibility of clinching a draft nuclear deal with Tehran under pressure from Iran's arch foe, Israel. Apparently, Tel Aviv had ordered its allies to reject a deal that had already been agreed upon by all parties involved in Iran's nuclear talks. A day after the meeting, Tel Aviv was quick to admit that it's done its utmost to make its allies reject a nuclear deal during the talks. Speaking at a cabinet meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu admitted to lobbying against what he called a bad and dangerous deal in private conversations with the leaders of the permanent members of the UN Security Council, as well as Germany.
I asked all the leaders, what is the rush? I suggested they wait and weigh all the issues seriously. It's a historical process, an historical decision to make. I request that they wait, and it's good that that's the decision that was made in the end, but I'm not deluding myself. There's a great desire to reach an agreement, and I hope it will not be at any cost. And if an agreement is reached, it has to be a good agreement, not a bad one.
On the third day of the talks, it became clear that the talks were influenced by Israel, as the French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said his country would not accept the draft deal and highlighted the need to take Israel's concerns into full account in any agreement with Iran. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who also attended the meeting, flew to Geneva from Tel Aviv, where he tried to diffuse Israeli concerns about the Geneva talks. But that's not where the Israeli lobbying all ends. Israel's economy minister, Naftali Bennett, says Tel Aviv will be using its influence in the U.S. Congress to prevent any agreement over Iran's nuclear energy program before a new round of talks start on November the 20th. Tel Aviv says it will push American lawmakers into averting any deal that would allow removing sanctions on Iran while giving it the right to enrich uranium. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has said that Iran's atomic rights, including uranium enrichment inside the country, under international regulations, are red lines that cannot be crossed.
Tahrim, tahghir va tab'iz jawab nakhwahed dad. Jumhuri Islami Iran در برابر تهدید هیچ قدرتی سر فرود نمی آورد و نیاورده.
Israel's been lobbying against Iran's nuclear energy program, while Tel Aviv is the sole possessor of nuclear weapons in the Middle East, with an estimated 400 nuclear warheads. In the early years, Israel heavily relied on French assistance to get its hands on nuclear weapons and held its nuclear activities secret for years. Tel Aviv still refuses to sign any regulatory international nuclear agreement, including the NPT. Iran, on the other hand, is a signatory to the NPT and has always called for a Middle East free of nuclear weapons.
I'd like to welcome my guest to the program. Out of San Francisco, investigative journalist Mr. Lee Kaplan. And out of Tehran, Press TV's newsroom director, Mr. Hamdreza Imadi. Thank you both for being with us. Well, I'd like to start this off in San Francisco with Lee Kaplan. Now, there are reports that basically there was an agreement until Israel, via France, made sure that the agreement wouldn't be signed. Your take on this, if it's true?
Well, Marzieh, your news report isn't completely accurate. The French decided they didn't want to cooperate with this, and your news report said it was due to the Israelis, but I don't think it's due to the Israelis. I think the French realize that, number one, if Iran's nuclear program is not curtailed, that they stand more threatened by it even than the United States. The French are also aware that there are two types of nuclear weapons. One of them is plutonium. And if Iran gets a pass on this and they're still allowed to enrich and make nuclear weapons, enrich the uranium to make nuclear weapons, that what can happen is if plutonium is used, it will be out of the realm to safely have a mission to destroy it militarily, because the plutonium will go into the atmosphere and poison the whole atmosphere. So the French, I think, are being very adult about this. When I look at what Secretary Kerry is doing, I see Neville Chamberlain again, flying back home and waving a piece of paper and saying, this is peace at our time. And then, of course, we all know what happened after that meeting in Munich.
Mr. Mahdi, your take on what Mr. Kaplan says, and basically brought plutonium in all this, basically saying it is Paris that actually, for whatever reason, just does not want this deal to go through.
Let me quote something from a leading Arab magazine. The French defense minister recently wrapped up a successful visit to the region by concluding a $1.5 billion deal with Saudi Arabia to overall Saudi Navy ships. This shows that the French recently are having financial dealings with regional countries like Saudi Arabia, which everyone knows is very much against the deal with Tehran. At the same time, we know that France provided Israel with nuclear weapons material, and France has very good military ties with Israel. So France is helping Israel get nuclear weapons. France is helping Saudi Arabia beef up its military sector. So this is the way France is dealing with these two entities. And these are the most vocal critics of a deal with Iran. So it is possible that the Israelis have told the French to go and sabotage the talks. We know that nothing can go without the US permission, so perhaps the United States was also involved in this. But what we know for now is France was the one that tried its best not to have a deal with Iran at this stage in Geneva.
Okay, what about that, Mr. Kaplan? Because we do know that the French foreign minister had said that there could be no deal that would end up not being good for Israel. So what exactly did he mean when he was talking about making sure that Israel would be satisfied with any possible deal that would come out of Geneva?
I think he was being very adult about the whole situation. You have unfortunately, Secretary Kerry and the Obama administration like to put blinders on and pretend that they're making negotiations that lead to a successful outcome. And I think the French took a look at this and they said this is going to lead to nuclear war down the line. Frankly, I think that the French do not do Israel's bidding. In fact, there have been many more occasions when they have refused to do Israel's bidding. And they certainly haven't in the past been friends of the United States in a lot of diplomatic stuff. I think the French really feel threatened by this. And when you allude to them helping the Saudis too, well, you know, that's in the interest of France. They're going to do what's in their best security interest. And they see that as the best way to go. The Obama administration is talking about releasing billions of dollars in money to the Iranian government, which have been held back by sanctions, which at the same time, the Iranian government is reeling from the sanctions, which should be kept in place until the nuclear capabilities are dismantled.
Mr. Mahdi, what do you make about the American Undersecretary of State, Wendy Sherman, traveling to Tel Aviv one day after these intense talks finish? It appears that she is basically going to Tel Aviv to give a report or to get orders from Israel. Your take on this? Why would she go straight from Geneva to Tel Aviv, not even returning to Washington?
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing for the Americans, for the American people, and for even the Europeans that their governments take orders from Tel Aviv. Israel is an entity which is in existence for 6 decades now, and it is ordering countries like the US, countries like France, countries like Britain, countries like Germany, and countries even like Russia and China what to do and how to think. So The Israeli Prime Minister said earlier today that he has called those leaders and he has asked them to wait and not rush into a deal with Iran. What does that mean? So what the P5+1 is doing now is just wasting the time of Iranians. It is just wasting the time of Europeans. It is just wasting the time of Americans if it is going to listen to what Israel is telling them to do.
Well, what about that, Mr. Kaplan? I mean, we have that Tel Aviv openly admitting that, but from now until November the 20th, when the next round of talks are scheduled, that they're going to be in Washington, they're going to be lobbying, they're going to be talking to American officials about this. Why is Israel in this whole problem or this whole equation? Because we're talking about the P5+1 countries plus Iran. Why is it so important that Israel has to give the okay or the yes or no, it appears, to Washington and others?
Well, it isn't necessarily so that Israel has to give the okay, but let's face it, Israel is the first target of any kind of nuclear proliferation or war that the Iranians might do. And to suggest, as my learned debating colleague there has said, that this country of 7 million Jews, this tiny little country, dictates everything for every major power in the world, including China and Russia, is nonsense. And we're going back to the same source of problems here. Is the Iranian regime always persisting in blaming Jews for every problem in the world?
It's not about Jews, Mr. Kaplan.
Your leader. Wait, let me finish,
it's not
please.
About Jews,
let me finish.
Your leadership. It's not about Jews.
It's
not talking
all
about Jews.
It's all about.
It's a fake
It's
regime.
all about. No,
it's got
I'm sorry.
Nothing to do with Jews. It's got everything
well,
to do
you're
with
interrupting.
Zionists
You're interrupting me, but it's all about attacking the Jews. It is.
It's not about attacking the Jews. It's got nothing to do with attacking the Jews.
That is.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kaplan.
It has everything to do with attacking the Jews.
No, it's not.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaplan.
Well, you know, he keeps interrupting me. It has everything to do with attacking the Jews. And when the government of Iran finally figures out that blaming the Jews for everything is, well, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. If the government of Iran finally stops blaming the Jews for all their problems and starts to move towards a democratic regime and a non-dictatorship and to better the lives of the people of Iran,
which
instead of heading them willy-nilly towards a nuclear war someday.
Nuclear non-proliferation treaty.
You see, you keep interrupting me because you're afraid of what I'm saying.
The regional countries. That's what
it is.
Mr. Kaplan,
Mr. Kaplan, let's look at where Wendy Sherman has gone today. Why has Wendy Sherman, in your perspective, gone straight from Geneva to Tel Aviv? It would appear that Tel Aviv is playing an integral part in all of this.
Well, that's easy to answer. She's going to Tel Aviv to try and twist the arms of the Israelis. They're trying to make the Israelis do concessions. They're always doing this at the U.S. State Department.
What
They're
kind
not
of
really
concessions?
the best friends
Can you stop right there? You said trying to twist the arm of the Israelis to do concessions. What type of concessions are you talking about? We're dealing with the nuclear talks between the P5+1 and Iran. What role does Israel play in all of this?
Well, I've already explained that Israel is the #1 target to attack. You have to remember,
explain the twisting the arm aspect. Can you expand on that, please?
Well, I'm trying to do that. If you'd stop interrupting me.
Please do.
The fact is that the fact is that the American government is hoping to curtail building of the settlements in the West Bank, which is at odds sometimes with the administration in Israel. And part of it is, trying to give Israel perhaps assurances that if they will cooperate with this concession to Iran that's going on in Geneva, that it will work to their advantage. And frankly, they don't go to Israel to get orders from Israel. They go to Israel to try and give Israel orders. They aren't usually successful, which is a good thing. Because what happens is you have politicians who are only interested in their own little careers and agreements. They'll make an agreement, and as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, a bad deal is a bad deal.
Okay,
there is
Mr.
no reason why, when the sanctions...
Mr. Muddy, now Mr. Kaplan said what Mr. Netanyahu has said, that a bad deal is a bad deal. Now we're talking about an entity that is believed to have many nuclear weapons, and yet they get the, if you want to say, opportunity or have the right to criticize Iran that continually says that it's a peaceful nuclear project that they have, and that they're not seeking nuclear weapons, and nor do they have it. So what does this mean as far as in the international community and international law, Mr. Imadi, where Israel gets basically to null and void a deal between Iran and the P5+1, and yet the Islamic Republic of Iran, who does not have nuclear weapons, basically has to continue to deal with sanctions and all the other pressure from parts of the international community?
Well, Israel does not want this crisis to go away. Israel wants this crisis to stay there where it is, because Israel is a parasite-type creature that lives on crises. It wants crises in the region. It wants crisis in the world, because it can tell its people that we have an enemy, we have to spend money on our military, we have to attack other countries because we have enemies. So it has to go on, go through this warmongering and fear-mongering projects in order to survive. Otherwise, Israel cannot survive, because Israel is a fake regime. Getting back to the P5+1 talks with Iran, the fact of the matter is that the previous Iranian negotiating team, a lot of people would say that it was not a serious one. But this time around, Mr. Zarif, Foreign Minister Zarif and his team are a serious one. And no one in Iran doubts about their seriousness. And if Foreign Minister Zarif cannot strike a deal with the other party, that means for Iranians that it was not the fault of the Iranian negotiating team, it was the other party's fault. So it is becoming very much clear for the Iranians that the other party, the Western party in particular, is wasting time. It's not negotiating in a good faith, in serious manner. That has to change. Those dynamics will have to change, and the Western party in the talks will have to stop listening to Israel if it wants to put an end to this crisis once and forever.
Mr. Kaplan, Iranian President Rouhani has said that the window of opportunity is limited, and that the Western countries should definitely take serious this opportunity. Do you think that the Western countries are taking this situation serious? And what would be wrong with actually striking a deal? Would that not be good for the international community in your perspective?
If the deal was to dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities, absolutely. But Mirza, you're doing something here which I call lying by omission. You leave out just enough information to convey a false impression. The fact is that your government has been threatening not only Israel, but they're building ICBMs and they're building satellites to deploy nuclear weapons. They're on a footing, and they are suggesting that they, in the long term, intend to attack Israel in the West. Now, you say it's the only opportunity for the West, because of Foreign Minister Zarif's suggestions. The Iranian government has offered to dismantle nothing. They have not even offered to dismantle the heavy water production in Iraq in your nuclear facilities. So this is a joke. You're offering, this is like the
we have nuclear rights under international law.
You're offering nothing. And let me touch in, while I have a chance, in fairness, let me talk about Israel and supposed nuclear weapons. Israel has never threatened anyone with nuclear weapons. They may have them. It's never been proven. They may have them for defensive purposes, but they have never threatened to nuke Iran. They have been attacked by Iran in the press, by Ahmadinejad, where he said he wants to wipe Israel off the map. And there's talks of the 12th Imam and wiping out Israel and conquering the Jews. And we're hearing it again from this gentleman on the other end of the debate about it's those Jews. They're controlling all the countries in the world.
It's not Jews. It's not about Jews. It's
okay,
not about Jews. It's about Israelis.
Israelis are Jews. I'm sorry. That's the truth.
You are a Zionist, and the whole world knows what Zionists are up to right now, what they're doing.
Zionism is a euphemism.
They're up to destroying the whole world.
Zionist is a euphemism. Zionism is a euphemism for anti-Semites to refer to Jews.
No, it's
that way
not.
they can try to say they don't
Okay,
hate
let me
the
just
Jews.
jump back in because we're almost out of time.
Absolutely.
Mr. Imadi, now Mr. Kaplan has said, first of all, that Israel has not used nuclear weapons. They may have it, but of course we do know that Israel has used chemical weapons against Palestinians and others many times over without being condemned in the international community.
Phosphorus bombs, Mr. Kaplan. Go read the news.
As it stands right now, Mr. Imadi, as it stands right now, with the situation on the ground, Mr. Kaplan, please don't interrupt me. Mr. Imadi, with the situation on the ground right now, as it stands, how likely is it that Tehran and the P5+1 would actually be able to reach a deal or not?
Well, Iran is very serious about the talks. Iran says we are ready to allay all the concerns of the United States and others about its nuclear program. Iran says that we are going to be more transparent. Iran says we are ready to do anything that it takes to show to the whole world that our nuclear program is a peaceful one. But as long as Israel is influencing the talks, as long as the Israeli Prime Minister calls these leaders, Western leaders, and orders them not to strike a deal with Iran, I don't know where these talks are headed. I don't know any point in negotiating with countries that do not have the authority to negotiate.
Okay.
And that's the way it goes. They have to stop listening to Israel if they want.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, both of you, but we're out of time. I appreciate you being with us, Mr. Lee Kaplan, investigative journalist out of San Francisco, and Mr. Ahmed-Reza Imadi, Press TV's newsroom director, right here in Tehran. And thank you, viewers, for being with us. Make sure you join us right here, same time, same place tomorrow. I'm Marzieh Hashemi signing out for myself and all the team right here at the debate. Thanks and goodbye.